Apple has made some truly innovative items, both in the hardware and software side of technology. They single-handedly created a design language and standard for all modern smartphones, built one of the most iconic operating systems, and integrated technology to create one of the, if not the first, modern desktop for consumer home use. The point is, I am in no means bashing Apple with this video. They really do create some of the most unique, beautiful, and functional devices in the technology and consumer world. That's why when they miss, you kind of notice it. I know, no matter what I say or do, the fight is coming in the comments. So if you hate Apple, leave a thumbs down. If you like Apple, leave a thumbs up. And if you're like me and think they're perfectly fine, just like Microsoft, let me know in the comments below. So there are tons of ways you can charge a mouse. Some charge right on the pad you're using it on, some have batteries, or like mine, connect via USB-C on the front. Apple decided you didn't need to do any of that because you can't use it while it's actually charging. In fact, the original 2013 model arguably was the better version because it had replaceable AA batteries. But to add insult to injury, the mouse also uses the lightning cable, not USB-C, not mini USB, lightning, an iPhone charger. You know that thing that's almost phased out of the entire lineup? That's how you charge the mouse. It also has an issue apparently where the charging port can get dirty, which in return might cause the cable to not connect and therefore no charge for you. Kind of reminds me of the old ball days when the mouse would stop working. It usually meant the ball had a bunch of dead skin or food gunk, whatever nasties you'd be doing on your desk. You know what I mean. Honestly, this is probably one of the worst offenders of like design language. And industrial design. Come on, Apple, come on. So the pencil itself isn't bad, but again, the way you charge it is. Now, they corrected it with version 2, but with the first Apple Pencil, this is how you charge it. Honestly, I had to purchase this third-party silicone thing so I can actually charge it without having a heart attack every time I place it down. And bonus, because of how you charge it, the iPad is pretty much inoperable, and even sitting it down is a challenge. I mean, the board is less than a half-inch thick. Any movement or tap could break this thing. Honestly, this is one of the worst designs because, I mean, look at it. Tell me this is something Steve Jobs would have wanted. My first iPhone was an iPhone 4, and yes, if you held it like you would any other cell phone, you wouldn't get a signal. Why? Because you covered up the antenna. And it happened to so many people, there's no way Apple didn't know about this. I think they wanted it to look good and be damned with the functionality. Apple never admitted it was their fault, but the way they fixed it was literally a band-aid solution. Giving everyone a free case, or what I like to call a rubber band that went around the antenna. Don't get me wrong, I thought the iPhone 4 was beautiful and design-wise still my favorite iPhone. But if the industrial design interferes with the core feature of the product, it's bad design. Like most of the things on this list, the iPhone 4 was a product of form over function. The iPod was a revolution. It changed the music industry and single-handedly kept Apple alive by creating a product that everyone wanted. But if you have one, flip it over. How many scratches does that mirrored metallic back have? I bet a lot. This was something that lasted the entire iPod life. Apple always turned a blind eye to this too. They released cases and even a small cottage industry of polishes and cleaners grew because of those iPod backs. But the whole joke was, as soon as you took it out of the retail box, you already had scratches on the back. You peasant. You don't deserve a spotless iPod. Seriously though, I'm sure they wanted the metallic back because it looked premium. But in reality, it was a bad design for something that was going to live in your pocket, car seat, purse, or desktop even. This is a more recent design flaw, but one that was such an issue, they totally went back to the old design and abandoned this one. And like all things, this was Apple going form over function. Before butterfly switches, Apple utilized a scissor design. Design was great. The design worked. The design felt good. But the keycaps were higher up, and Apple wanted to make the laptop smaller. Now you might be wondering, how many micro inches could one save by shortening the keycap design that would be a dramatic and noticeable difference? Oh, I'm just waiting for Apple to answer that because I have no idea. But okay, no big deal. What's wrong with the butterfly keys? Well, dust is the problem. The actual space between the joints were so small that if any dust got into it, the keys would render useless. That 1K laptop you just purchased? Done, because of a speck of dust. That keyboard would misregister hits, get stuck, or not register the press at all. Now, Apple being Apple never admitted defeat, or dare I say, acknowledged that they made a design flaw, which was kind of the same deal with the iPhone 4. So they added a membrane under the keyboard to try to capture the dust before it goes into the switches, but apparently that didn't really work either. So eventually they quietly killed off the butterfly keys and went back to the scissor keyboard. Thank you. What's the best case for a music player? How about, got this for you, a cloth tube you put the entire player in. What if you didn't have a cutout for the screen, and the only way to switch tracks or see the screen is to constantly take it out of the case? Introducing the Ipod Sock. If you watch the actual press conference, yes, the late Steve Jobs actually showed it off on stage. It seemed like a joke. It was a joke, right? Right? Oh.
When our design team came up with socks,
He's still going.
They keep your iPod warm on cold days.
Keeps it warm? Wait, how am I supposed to use the click wheel?
Going to go on sale by mid-November for $29. We hope you like it.
Wait, I have to pay 30 bucks for this? All joking aside, even Steve seemed a bit annoyed by this thing. Like, even he was making a joke out of it. Now, okay, this does help the whole scratching of the metallic back, but honestly, these are like those novelty items you find at the dollar store. And honestly, kind of a bad design all around, because while a case is designed to protect your mobile device, you can't see the screen anymore or use that mobile device as intended once it is attached to it. This is a tricky one. The stand itself isn't a bad design, and neither is the display, but as a whole, it's bad design, because you see, the display and stand are two separate entities, meaning if you buy the screen, you don't get the stand. The screen can't stand on its own either, you need the stand. And if you think you'll just get a VESA stand, you need to buy an adapter to use that too. That's right, this thing doesn't have a VESA mount. I understand this display was meant to be a professional display, more of a reference monitor than surfing the web or watching YouTube videos, and yes, reference monitors are expensive. But this monitor doesn't have the input devices reference monitors utilize, and let's be clear here, even those monitors come with the stand, or at the very least, a way to mount them. In conclusion, with this one, the stand, the monitor, and the VESA mount isn't necessarily bad design, but the strategy and cost behind it is bad design altogether. You can't mount this monitor without purchasing a $200 adapter, period. And that cost seems extremely superficial compared to the actual monitor. But anyway, I don't think the product is bad design. I think the basic breakout and sold separately design is atrocious. You know you screwed up when the second generation was 1,000 times better than the model replacing it, and the fourth generation went back to the second generation design language. RIP iPod Shuffle, you piece of shit.
Without thought.
But yeah, this was the third generation Shuffle, and yes, you are right, there's no controls. You see, the controls are on the headphones, so even more prone to breaking, and which were almost guaranteed to break within a month or two. This also meant you could never use any other headset if you wanted to listen or control your MP3 device. Apple designed these to be a quick pick up and go player. You set the playlist through iTunes and you just listen. Oh, and I think the headphones had a special chip in it that the unit had to handshake with in order to work, so even if you had other headphones with controls on them, it ain't gonna work. But Apple even topped that. You notice how there's no power connector? The headphone jack doubled as a power input, which you also needed a special cord for. This is actually eerily familiar with modern day problems. If you have lightning headphones but also need to power your iPhone, third gen Shuffle owners already know your struggle. Only lightning cables you can kind of find. This thing you ain't never finding in the wild if you lose it. You might not remember this thing, but it was the granddaddy of all iPhones because this was the first phone that had iTunes on it. Now, the concept wasn't a bad idea. A phone with one of the most successful MP3 interfaces, who wouldn't want it? But the functionality and design was probably some of the worst implementations ever. Now honestly, this does not look like an Apple product, and that's because it's not. It's a Motorola product, and a Motorola product that was already 2 years old when it was shown at the Apple conference. And if you watch, you can see Steve is kind of getting annoyed with this thing, and this is a prelude to how this phone would work, sell, and be reviewed. The Rocker E1 was kind of a disappointment, especially to Apple. The biggest problem was its capacity, and you might be thinking, doesn't this thing have expandable storage? Yes, you could go up to 1 GB, so why only 100 songs? I'm not sure if it was true, but Steve didn't want a phone that wasn't his, to overshadow their own products. So by cutting the songs to 100, it looked inferior to Apple's own products. It was also just a feature phone with the only added addition, a button that went right into iTunes. But the interface was designed for that click wheel, not the nub. It was also slower to transfer music. At the time, we had USB 2.0, and this thing was stuck in 1.0. And if you ever go back to one of those older versions of USB, trust me, you don't want to do that. Even the DAC inside the unit, the tech that makes the music sound good, was vastly inferior to the iPods. And just like the Shuffle, required a special headset to actually listen to the music. Yeah, not a standard headphone jack, great design all around. And honestly, the iPod interface was designed around that click wheel, not a nub, so when you took that click wheel out, you kinda lost that design function. So, the newest product on this list is also kind of the saddest. As in, I'm pretty sure no design went into this thing at all. I mean, they don't really protect your almost $600 headphones, offering no real rigidity or padding. And let's not forget that a lot of the device is exposed, even when fully closed. And you might be thinking, why not just get another case? Well, it's called a smart case because it has magnets that talk to the headphones, letting them know they're being put away and to go into a low power mode. Now, I tend to think Apple changed a lot when Steve passed. I remember reading a book, it might have been Pirates of Silicon Valley, or it might have been the Steve Jobs book. But from what I remember, when they were designing the original Macintosh, he walked into that meeting, dropped the phone book down in the middle of everyone, and said it needed to be the size of this and walked the
without thought
out. This was the day when the computers were the size of refrigerators, mind you. So all I'm saying is this was not a design approved by Steve Jobs. But honestly, the worst design about this case is that you need it to trigger the low power mode. Now, the headphones do go in a low power mode when it's not being used, but if you're out, you might have these around your neck or in a bag, not stationary on a desk. So does it still trigger that low power mode? Either way, the case could have been designed so much better, but it really does seem like an afterthought. So that is my list. There's a lot more I could cover, but these are the worst offenders. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Do you agree with this list? Anything you would take off or replace? Anything I missed? I'm a bit about the display and stand, but there's definitely a bad something with that whole thing, right? Either way, hit me up below. Come back next week where we'll be talking about something else design oriented. I don't know, maybe the worst design things Microsoft ever made. You know that Xbox 360 overheating thing is going to be like #1 on that list. Probably the Kin? Yeah, I bet you have no idea what that thing is. Microsoft sure wishes you didn't. Anyway, until next time, I'll see you guys later.